Batman has suffered many defeats in his life. Most of them are temporary, but some, even temporary defeats, have left their mark. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda. Today we're counting down the top 10 brutal Batman defeats. What do you think Batman's worst loss has been? Let us know in the comments. Number 10, tormented and defeated on repeat. When Joker received 99.9% of Mr. Mxyzptlk's power, he used this power to wreak all kinds of havoc. One of the things he used these new epic reality warping powers for was to torment Batman forever on repeat. Daily, Emperor Joker would severely torment and kill Batman, although in the end, Batman was the key to Joker's defeat, being Joker's one true weakness, since his identity was so closely tied to Batman's. However, Batman was left so traumatized from this whole experience that he became a broken man, a shadow of his former self, unable to operate as a hero. Superman actually had to steal his memories of the experience away in order to return Batman to himself once more so he could resume being a hero and just not being like a complete mess all the time. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us by clicking that like button. Number 9, A League of One. Superheroes don't always lose to supervillains in the comics. In the case of the JLA story A League of One, this time around the League is actually defeated by one of their own, Wonder Woman. However, Wonder Woman doesn't do this to actually cause them harm or, kill them, but simply to get them just out of the way. This is because the League is facing a dragon and there is actually a prophecy that it will cost the group of heroes their lives. Wonder Woman not only manages to defeat the League, but also manages to sidestep her own doomed fate upon facing that dragon. Number 8, loss of his parents. Obviously, one of the worst defeats to happen to Batman happened to him when he was simply known as young Bruce Wayne. This would be the loss of his parents. Without them dying, he wouldn't be the man he is today, for better or for worse. The death of his parents tormented young Bruce so much that it, along with another freak encounter with a bat, inspired him to become the masked vigilante known as Batman. So in a way, it's this trauma that has led to so many of the other awful experiences that Batman has suffered through, countless physical injuries as well as mental and emotional turmoil, and both victories but also other defeats as well. Number 7, Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel event, Ra's al Ghul manages to use Batman's own intel and files on the Justice League to defeat them. Ra's gains access to Batman's systems and is able to retrieve these detailed files and plans via his daughter Talia. He uses this information to take on and defeat all members of the Justice League, even managing to seemingly distract Batman by robbing the graves of his parents. Number 6, Death of the Justice League. The Death of the Justice League kicked off in issue number 75 of the 2018 Justice League series. What happened to the Justice League here? Well, they faced off against Pariah, who himself is from one of the first worlds to be targeted during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Pariah was cursed with basically watching all these worlds die again and again, unable to stop it, despite being one of the first people to warn everyone that Crisis on Infinite Earths was coming. Now, with the multiverse reset following the events of Death Metal, Pariah claimed that he saw the signs of Crisis on Infinite Earths happening again. Desperate to prevent this, his plan was to wipe the slate clean when it comes to the heroes so that the possibly new Anti-Monitor, who will come into existence, will have no reason to continue with the crisis. That was his thinking anyways. Seems like some flawed logic to me, but this man has also seen some terrible things in his time, so I understand his desperation to do whatever he thinks will work when it comes to avoiding another crisis. Along with most of the rest of the League, Batman was believed to have perished in the fight against Pariah. Of course, we later learned this wasn't exactly what had really happened. Not quite what we thought, as usually when people perish in comics. We're like, they're gone? No, they're back. Number 5, failed Barbara Gordon. One of the hardest failings for Batman was when Barbara Gordon and her father, Commissioner Gordon, were successfully targeted by the Joker. Caught unaware, Babs found herself shot through the spine and paralyzed as a result of this attack. She was attacked and tormented by the Joker, who took pictures of her in pain and in states of undress for the purpose of making her father go insane. This all happened in Killing Joke, and though not all of the events of that story were made canon, Babs' pain and becoming paralyzed were. Batman has always felt awful for what happened to Barbara and has never blamed her, and if anything, he feels more guilty for the fact that he wasn't there and wasn't able to protect her more. Number 4, defeated by the Joker. Jason Todd was lost to Batman years ago when he was defeated by the Joker. Really, both Jason Todd and Batman were defeated by him, as the loss of Jason would haunt Batman for years afterwards. Jason Todd was one of those characters you expected to stay dead too. For years, his death was considered one of the few permanent and unyielding ones in comics, kind of like Uncle Ben, who has always pretty much stayed dead. We never expected to see him return, and yet more than 20 years later, he did just that. The return of Jason would be another rough moment in Batman's life, as when Jason returned, he was drastically and forever changed. Losing Jason had already been one of the hardest moments of Batman's life after all. His coming back, unfortunately, didn't make the loss Batman had suffered years earlier with his defeat to the Joker any less painful, unfortunately. Number 3, Final Crisis, which actually apparently wasn't so final, as Dark Crisis did end up following after its events. But regardless of whether or not it was actually final, Final Crisis was definitely a bad time for Earth. In this story, Darkseid actually succeeds in obtaining and releasing the anti-life equation on Earth. He puts it on the internet where it can be easily seen and then spread. Those who see it basically lose their will to live, becoming enslaved to Darkseid and his will instead of having their own will. While in the end, the heroes do manage to break free from the influence of Darkseid and the anti-life equation, with Batman himself defeating Darkseid in the end with a radion bullet, Darkseid still works to enslave all of Earth and many of its heroes, for a time being seen as the victor. And even when Batman does succeed in beating Darkseid, he himself is believed killed as a result. However, in reality, he was kind of just like thrown way back through time and went to essentially have time-traveling adventures until he finally made his way back to the main continuity universe. But hey, we didn't know that at the time. We had to wait to find that out. Number 2, death of Damian Wayne. Batman has lost a lot of Robins over the years and a lot of adopted sons, but Damian Wayne was his natural heir. Well, natural-ish. As natural as it gets till we get a Helena Wayne in the main continuity, if that ever happens again. A girl can dream, at least. Damien was the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul. He was raised by Talia in the League of Assassins, without Batman even knowing of his existence, until years later when Talia dropped him off on Bruce's doorstep, declaring Damien his son. Initially, the two did not get along very well. Damien was stubborn in his ways and insisted on killing, as he'd been trained his whole life to do, because League of Assassins, but eventually he came around and began to see the value in his father's approach to fighting crime, respecting it and even admiring it. Just as their relationship began to evolve into something more resembling a true father-son connection, built on respect and trust and all that good stuff, Damien was killed by the Heretic, a death that Batman can't even bring himself to avenge when he realizes that the Heretic is Damien's clone. Following Damien's death, we also got Volume 2 of Batman's issue number 18, an issue that focuses on the mourning of Damien's passing and is completely wordless throughout its sorrow-filled pages. Of course, Damian Wayne would also return, but you know, at the time it was brutal. Number 1, death of Alfred. What could possibly be a greater defeat than the loss of Batman's parents, Batman's son? How about the loss of his confidant, his butler, and more importantly, his lifelong father figure, Alfred? I don't think it gets much more brutal than this. While the death of Batman's parents is tragic, Alfred was there to help pick up the pieces and in essence help to raise the boy before his parents passed, and of course thereafter. He was probably one of the closest people to Batman and was more apparent to Bruce in the end than his parents were able to be due to them being lost to him when he was so young. Alfred was shockingly killed by Bane after he kidnapped him when Damian Wayne didn't take Bane's threat seriously and set out to save Alfred. Bad idea, Damien. It was because of his pursuit of Bane that Alfred was killed by the villain, and this was all part of Bane's plan to break Batman again, but this time focusing more on breaking him mentally and psychologically than, physically. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.